All right, everybody. I am so excited today to have Sarah Grace Allred here with me. And not only is she a really close friend, but she is brilliant. The thing that I love the most about her, though, is her enthusiasm. She makes anyone feel like they can do anything. And she's a big believer in big dreams. And my big dream is to seek and expect miracles in marriage. And Sarah has not had big problems in her marriage at all. She hasn't had a bunch of big issues, but she has had just little ones that added up to issues that she was like, I want to get help with this. And I would love to know a better way or what would work in this situation. And so we want to just normalize that every single person has issues in their marriage, that we all have struggles. And I know when I was having the biggest issues in mine, I felt like I was so alone and that nobody else had problems and that I was the only one sitting in the pew and everybody else's marriages looked perfect and we are the only ones that didn't. So, Sarah, will you speak a little bit to that?
I love that question, Shar, and I'm a huge fan of yours and what you do and your bravery to go about normalizing uh, making your marriage exceptional, right? And I think that's really where I got stuck. And I think it's so funny. You think I'm so enthusiastic, and I will continue to be crazy enthusiastic about making your marriage awesome because it is so incredibly possible. And I think that really where our story started is my husband is in the medical field, and we've been married now 15 years, and we have spent 12 of those in medical school residency training, right? We have moved all across the country. You understand all of this, Shar. Like, we just have been from poverty and beyond with everything that we've done. And I think that we got stuck in the waiting game. We got stuck in a space as a couple where it was like, you go do your medical thing, I'm going to do the family thing. We'll high five on the weekends basically, and we're just going to survive this and wait until it's over, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what where we got stuck is we got stuck in the mediocre, where it was just very, I would like call it like a very gender role marriage, like you do this, I do this, and there just was no cohesiveness as far as like a friendship between him
Mm-hmm.
and I. And while like really normal feelings of like him just feeling exhausted all the time and me being a little bit resentful because he was doing his dreams and I was wiping bums and like, I mean, raising kids, that whole
Right,
thing.
right.
Little things would sneak in, but I think what was the most shocking is when we had spent 12 years of master's degrees and bachelor's degrees and residency and med school, and we graduated, and it was about 6 months after he had graduated. He was now making good money. We were now settling into a job doing that kind of stuff. And I kind of looked at him and he kind of looked at me, and it was sort of like, wow, there's nothing else to wait for. So, like, what are you and I gonna do? Right?
Yes.
Where it wasn't like always planning for when he was done and when we got the dream job and all those kinds of things. And we had to almost shine a light on the fact that while we were friends, we weren't great friends.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't like best friends. We were very polite with each other. I've never had like yelling or,
Right.
any of that kind of stuff. But holy smokes, we were mediocre friends at best, right? And so that's really when we started to address like where do we want our marriage to go? And so our journey took us, we got a really random opportunity to meet with a marriage therapist as sort of a release for a podcast she was doing. And so we started to meet with her privately to work through some of our issues. And Shar, I tell you, it got so bad. It got so bad. Do you feel like that's kind of normal? Tell me I'm normal that it got really bad once we started to try and repair
Oh,
it.
Lord. First of all, I just have to tell you that our marriage was perfectly fine, no screaming, no yelling, no trouble, till we bought our first house within 6 months. It was the exact same
Oh
story.
my gosh,
That was
really?
exactly when everything hit the fan for us. And then the counseling, yeah, that almost took us to us personally to separation. It was that bad, like getting in and trying to discuss those issues with each other that we didn't even think were that big of a deal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel halfway normal. That is so great. That is so great. Just that, yeah, we just started to verbalize uh,
Mhm.
what it was like. And I think that the biggest tool that I would bring to your listeners is, I mean, it's going to sound really callous, is to just don't take it so personally, right?
Yeah.
To just
Right.
get into a space of like neutral discussion.
Mhm.
And some of the tools that we were given,
Mhm.
was I had to dive into this question. And listeners, tell me how fun this would be. Okay. I had to answer the question, what is it really like to be married to me?
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, disaster, dumpster fire, right? And it was such an exposing kind of exercise. And he had to do the same thing, but we did
Mhm.
it very, very privately. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful that we went to bat for that, because for the first time in our life, we just had to expose what wasn't working, right? We had to expose the fact that what I'm just gonna be really blunt, that I was a scorekeeper, right? That I
Mhm.
was keeping track of how much time he got to split to sleep compared to how much time I got to sleep.
Mhm.
How many times he had taken the garbage out, I mean, it just sounds so ridiculous, but it was my reality, is that he was married to a scorekeeper. And what a nightmare, Shar. What a nightmare to be married to someone like that. And he brought his own things to the table, which really is his story to tell. But the beauty of that is something that I could face, because it was me. It
Yep.
was only me and my actions. And so I got to be put into a position where I got to decide if I really wanted the exceptional marriage, if I really wanted the change, because
Mhm.
it had to start with me facing my own demons in the room.
Yeah. So, question about that. I talk to people all the time and they say, why do I have to do the work and he doesn't? Or he has to, he'll say, I'm doing everything. She's not, she doesn't care. And I always say, I wish so bad that I could tell you how to change another person and make them do what you want, but it doesn't work.
It
And
doesn't work.
so, what are your ideas of how it went from mediocre to exceptional, but how?
Oh, there's like a moment in time where it shifted.
Mm.
Okay. So
Mhm.
we were in the middle. We had about 6 sessions with this particular coach, and
Mhm.
just had our very first one, and
Mhm.
we're preparing for the second. And so she recommended that we re-listen to the session before, because they were recorded, and
Mhm.
kind of discuss it so that we could both be on the same page coming into the second. And one of the things that we were talking about is I really wanted him to stand up for me in front of some of his family members who are to this day very unkind to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was something that I just wanted him to do, that I needed him to do,
Right.
right? So
Right.
we're sitting here. I mean, it's legitimately still at this desk that I'm sitting at right now. We're sitting there talking about it. And I said, I wish you would just say XYZ to this person. Like, I wish you would do that for me, right? Like, if I meant enough to you, you would do this for me. And he put his hand on my leg and he said, would that be enough for you? And I just crumbled, Shar. I just absolutely crumbled to pieces, because I knew that it wouldn't be enough. And here's why, for any of you listeners who are battling with something similar to this, wanting them to change. Because even if he did the thing, even if he went to the person and said the thing, I would know he did it because I told him to
You
do it.
told him to do it instead because it came straight from his heart to do it for you.
Right.
Right.
And I had to, and that is probably that phrase when he said, would that be enough for you? It's probably the meanest thing he's ever said to me, and
Mhm.
the greatest thing that he has
Mhm.
ever said for our marriage, because I had to let go of controlling his every move, right? And once I gave him the freedom to choose, he just flew to the moon. His ability to make choices in everything from his faith to his workout regimen, to his eating habits, to his role as a husband and father, to his community life. he all of a sudden, it was like I broken these handcuffs off of him, that he had to do things for me to keep me happy. He was then in a position where he could legitimately choose, and I wouldn't bail on him. And he saw that over and over and over and over again. And he is 10 times the person that I ever wanted him to be in that moment.
Oh, say, okay. So my question for you right now, Sarah, is did he mess it up when he was doing it on his own and you were letting him do his thing? In your head, was it like,
Sure,
you're doing it wrong, right?
sure. I would
So,
watch moments pass where I wish he'd stood up for me and I kept my mouth shut. And
okay, so I was going to ask you, what did you do?
I was silent. I
Mhm,
was silent, especially, I mean, we had one little deal, and this is probably not a hugely important thing, but in
mhm,
that specific moment of standing up for me, I had a little sign,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Where I was like, this is a moment you could consider, or I want you to see what's happening here,
Exactly. Mhm,
whatever. But I
mhm,
never called him out. I never drug it out late at night in a conversation in bed or
mhm,
anything like that.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
I really shut my mouth and I said, this is not about me.
Yes, yes. That is my favorite phrase. This is not, what am I making this mean about me?
Mhm.
I love that question because it's so often we make it so personal. Like you said, how can we neutralize this? Because this isn't about me. I remember having the exact same issues you're having, but it was with my kids. I'm like, why are you not sticking up for me? A good husband would be like, you do not talk to your mother like that, right?
Right.
You don't just sit back. A good, this is what this husband does that I'm seeing, he says, do not speak to your mother like that. And so you must not respect me if you don't stick up for me like that, right? And I made it so personal. And it sounds like we came to the same conclusion. Like,
I agree. And Shar, I think the beauty in that observation is that regardless of who's listening, whether they are dealing with something in related to pornography or an affair or an addiction, or someone who seems to love their job way more than you, it really, I don't mean to like neutralize and say those are all in the same plane, but
right.
what I mean is that the behaviors of the partner that's hurt are largely the same.
Yeah.
It's personalized and it's internalized, and it's a lot of, I want to control your behavior and taking this personally. And I think it's a wonderful step to work with a coach like you, that can really help a woman or a man, whatever partner that is, that's ready to
Hmm.
embrace a better marriage, help them stay focused on, what can I do? What are my behaviors doing? What is it like to be married to me? Worst question ever, you guys. Should ever. But I don't think it's possible. Like, I'm going to say this really bluntly, I don't think it's possible to do instinctively.
I
You
don't
need
either.
a coach, you need a curriculum, you need the language of it. My husband is a physician and really brilliant. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm super good at what I do. And we could not figure this out. Okay. Has nothing to do with the fact that you're stupid or dumb or don't understand things. You need somebody that's really understood the craft and the language of what you're experiencing.
I think that is such a good point because I couldn't do it either. I could not do it either by myself. And the thing is, I had the gospel and I had all the, like, have charity and love and all the things, but I couldn't figure out the how. Like, how do I have charity and love? And I want to know, I just have a question for you as to, oh, it'll come back to me. I just forgot what I was going to ask you. Sarah, speak to what you were speaking to, and I bet it'll come to me.
Let's see, just that you can't do it alone, that we were really smart in other areas of our lives, but this was an area that we just could not even see eye to eye from the very beginning on, that we had to surround ourselves with someone who understood it, who knew the language of it, who
Mhm.
could help us individually, make that kind of growth. Does that spark your question at all?
Yes, I think I can't remember the exact question, but I just want to normalize that, like you said, you can be brilliant in other ways, but we're all real people with real marriage stuff. And I
Yeah.
want to know if this is my question, just came to me, Sarah.
Oh, good.
Was it all his fault? Was everything his fault to you in the, like, when you were in a bad spot? Or could you see that a lot of it was your fault? Like, how was that for you?
I actually take the brunt of the fault now. Now
Like,
that I
did you then before, like
know
before, did like back when you just started with the coach, was it his fault or your fault?
it was his fault.
Yeah, same with me. It was completely his fault. Like there was no part of it that was my fault.
Mhm.
Was
Yeah.
that for you at all?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when we initially started, I could have written you a list and I could probably show it to all your listeners and they would all agree with me. And they
Yeah.
would say, "Yep, his fault. You can stay mad for the rest of your life. You deserve to be
Mhm.
mad. Feel you're mad." All those things. I
Yeah.
could have stayed stuck in that realm. And I think
Mhm.
I just was way more driven that I wanted something exceptional.
Right.
And I was desperate enough for it. Like I was hungry enough for it. I saw enough in him to know something was possible.
Mhm.
But my approach initially had been, well, as soon as he figures that out, we will we will reach the exceptional. And man, did it start with the exposure to me of what I was facing.
I feel like I had the same thing. I would call it, I started to figure I got a ton of awareness, like it sounds like you do. And it almost felt to me like, what's another word besides awareness that I was thinking of? It was an awakening almost.
I love that.
Like like we hear about in the scriptures, a spiritual awakening. It felt like a me awakening. Like you said, I'm gonna put like the camera straight on you, Sarah, and how would it be to be married? Or I didn't ask that question to myself. It would have been an awesome one, but it was the same work. It was, wait, what part of this is mine? Huh? Some of this is mine? What
Mhm.
are you talking about?
And well, and you're so right that that is actually that's the hinge point.
Mhm.
If you are unwilling to face your own humanity, you will not reach it. You will not reach the exceptional. It has nothing to do with him or her, has
Mm-mm.
nothing to do with the other partner. But if you want the exceptional and the remarkable marriage that you thought you were buying into the day that you got married, if that's what you want, the price to be paid is facing you, that you're a human. You first, always.
That's excellent. Brilliant as always, Sarah. As always. So another question I have for you about this is, and because Sarah and I haven't even talked about this, we haven't had this conversation. So this one is, as you gave him, as you, I would say, relinquish control and kind of the manipulation of do this and do that and I'll feel better kind of thing, then did he help you or stick up for you with his family, or is it still that same way and you just have learned that that's not who he is and it's okay? Like it's okay that he doesn't.
Hmm. So I'll be really honest in this
Mhm.
in this. He has transformed.
He has.
He has, and I say that really carefully because I know that that is not always the case.
Right, right.
And so I want to put a little caveat in that to say
Mhm,
um, he has stood up for me, and it has
mhm,
actually led to some major distance with some family members
mhm,
because we've held a standard there.
mhm,
Um, but I think the thing that I want to really firmly communicate is
mhm,
as he was learning what he wanted to stand up for and not through
mhm,
that kind of a journey, and it's still
mhm.
ebbs and flows.
Right,
Hello,
of
human
course.
nature, right?
Right.
That we would have been okay either way.
Yes. I wanna make the same point
Okay.
because in my case, and I will be the opposite, he still doesn't stick up for me as far as the kids most of the time.
Okay.
I'd say 9 out of 10, it's his personality. And I kicked against, like, I realized when you fight against reality, you lose 100% of the time, right? This, it's just, that's who his personality is. He's calm, he's mild, he doesn't want to ruffle anyone's feathers, and he still, it is just, he's not going to do that, but I'm going to make it mean anything about me. I'm just going to make it mean, it doesn't mean that I'm the bad cop, he's the good cop, and all the things I used to make it mean about my marriage. I was
Mhm.
just like, this is his personality. This is actually what I loved about him when I met him. He was the kindest person. Like he treated me better than any other guy I'd ever dated. He was so just kind that he couldn't say. And I mean, he really, it's very hard for him to have any kind of contention with anyone, including me.
Mhm.
And so, and it's still amazing. Like our marriage is still so awesome, and that hasn't changed. But it's not this thing that every time it happens anymore, I'm like, he's such a jerk. He doesn't stick up for me. He isn't doing what a good husband does. None of that anymore at all. In fact, like I said, I want to feel good in my marriage. And so I will say, I am so glad he has the quality of kindness. And luck, good thing that I'm sassy because someone has to be around here.
Balance. It's called balance, right?
Right?
I will just echo that in the sense that um I love your the approach to your podcast because it all can't just be 110% victories, right? It just
Mhm,
isn't all this is everyone who's reached XYZ and this is the path to get there. It's an ability of operating together. Because
mhm,
just because my wonderful husband, just because he now stands up for me, does that mean that there aren't still things that I wish were different? Well, of course not,
right,
right?
right.
But the foundation of what you teach and your, process and your experience that you offer is so foundational, right? That it doesn't matter what ebbs and flows in it and the behavior that comes and goes with a partner. That it's to lay your friendship and your partnership on a whole different foundation as those kids grow and as those kids make choices and as things change financially and job wise and location wise and church calling wise, all those things. Um if if you feel like your marriage is just super polarizing in the sense it just ebbs and flows, you need a foundation, right, on how you communicate and how you work together, and most importantly how you communicate with yourself and how
Mhm,
you approach each day and how you approach conflict, because it will be there. It
mhm.
will be there. So the work you do is so important.
You make a really good point because I remember when it was really, really rough for me, I was just like positive attitude and, white knuckling it. And I can think, I can do this. It's okay. And I've got this. But then the next thing that happened, I'd be right back down where I was before,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
it only got me so far. And when I first heard about life coaching, I honestly thought, rah, 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 you can do it. That doesn't work. Because as soon as the next thing hits the fan, I feel like garbage again. And so that doesn't even work. But I realized, I think the point you're making is that this is a belief system. So it's changing how you actually believe about the situation. Like for you, you changed the belief of about your husband, whether he does this or not, whether he sticks up for me. This is about me and how I'm choosing to respond to what happens between he and his family.
right. And Charlotte brings to my mind, this sounds so crazy, but it brings to my mind, in my church, I teach the kids to sing that are age 3 to 11. Okay. And
Mhm.
we sing this song about Noah. Am I allowed to sing on your podcast?
Oh
Because this
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the chorus, it's called Build an Ark. And the chorus goes, I will build an ark before it starts to rain. I will follow the Lord and do all things in his name. And I love the chorus because it says, I will build an ark before it starts to rain. And that is what you teach, is how do I, in the good times when we're sailing by a little bit better, how am I building this sustaining power within myself, within my mind, within my heart, within my partnership? So when it does rain, I have bandwidth there. I have resources there. I have tools. I have, methods in which I can go through this instead of just being depleted at every single turn, because that's when the turmoil just becomes unbearable.
That was so excellent, Sarah. It's excellent. And I remember, you know all about this because you were right in the middle of it. But sorry, I've got a little frog. Um, what I remember is just about the time I thought, with this work, I have a sure mind and I have a sure foundation, Jesus Christ, and I can handle anything that comes my way. In my marriage, in my parenting, in my life, bring it. Heavenly Father, bring it. I've got this. And that is right when my son came home from tennis and fell on the ground and wasn't able to walk for 5 months and spent all this time, in a wheelchair. And I'm like, I was just kidding. I really, you don't have to bring it. I'm good. But see, the marriage was fine then, and I feel like we've already had this, and it's been fine, and I know, and he knows that we're not anywhere in that spot where it could get back to where it was. It will never will be again because of the foundation. But it was interesting to have this different experience with my son and to go, oh, yep, this still works. This isn't just marriage. This is across the board mortality.
I love that you bring in that, like, while you're a marriage person, you just see the ripple effect of
Mhm.
what you've experienced. And I think that there's such a key role in that. And I love what you do because I think creating a foundation as a partnership is the most powerful form on earth,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Mhm.
but recognizing that that foundation impacts everything. When you shore up a woman of the house with confidence and with a belief system and with a drive and with a foundation, who does that impact? It impacts everyone. It impacts a neighborhood. It impacts a church. It impacts a school. It impacts children. It impacts grandchildren. And yes, it impacts a marriage, right? But what you teach is truth, is that truth resonates, and you will see the impacts when you get into a squabble with someone in the pew next to you. You're going to have those same kinds of foundations. And so I guess the big message I just want to scream from the rooftops is like, build up the ark before it rains. Okay. And if it's
Love it.
raining right now, Char's here. Like, let her help you if it's raining, raining, raining. But regardless if it's raining or not, build the ark now. Doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be this, oh my gosh, they could make a Lifetime movie out of my story. Like, build it now when you're like, this just isn't quite as awesome as I thought it would be. And I'm kind of not sure why. And this is just a little thing here and there. Build the ark, build the ark.
Yes,
That's what I do.
excellent. I love it. So a couple more questions, Sarah.
Yeah.
What was the one I wanted to ask you? Okay. So if you could go back to the Sarah that was before you got coached and was like, it's all his fault and struggling, and what are we doing now? Okay, this medical school's over and here we are looking at each other. What would you tell her? The same thing, build the ark, or what would you have told that Sarah then?
That's a really good question. I have never been asked that. Nice,
Hmm.
nice question. Um, I would, I'm not a person who likes to live in regret. I think what I would tell her is, I would say the past is not a predictor of the future.
Love
I
it.
I would just infuse her with hope. Because I did not have hope back then. I did not. I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of resentment. I had a lot of martyrdom. I had a lot of why me. I had a lot of scarcity, all those words that make you kind of want to die inside. But I had a lot of that. And I think that I was so worried that this was just the status quo, that you know how they say, like, past performance is the best predictor of future behavior. And
Right.
I'm like, that is so garbage. Like,
It's
it doesn't have to
garbage.
be for Jesus in it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Right? We have a savior, right? So I would infuse her with the message of hope.
Absolutely love that. I love it so much. And I have thought so often about this, just this one point that we all have a Cinderella story. So we have the part of the Cinderella story where we have an evil stepmother and we have stepsisters that are abuse us and are super mean to us, and we clean all day and nobody cares, and all of the things, we're living in a dungeon and we're miserable and everyone hates us and we're all alone and all the things, right? And then we also all have the other part of the story, which is the fairy godmother, who I like to think of as Christ, the healer. She comes in and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna turn this pumpkin into a coach, and I'm gonna have you find you this best prince, and you're going to go and have the best time at this ball, and even when everything goes wrong, I'm going to give you this shoe, and then we're going to find you back, and everything's going to come together in the end. And I'm like, which story do you want to tell? Because they're both true. They're both true, right? The story with the stepmother really did happen and it really was awful, and this one was true and it really was awesome. And even if this one is true, is it helpful? Is it going to make your marriage exceptional? is it going to turn things around so that you have a best friend and desire and affection for one another, and this marriage that you want to, I don't know, show your kids how it can be done, be an example of what's possible, all the things.
Sure, that's unbelievable. I'm never gonna watch Cinderella the same ever again. Ever again. I've really never thought about the part that really hit me was even when it all goes wrong, I will still give you the shoe, right? That
Yeah.
reminder of who you really are and who you're meant to be. That's gonna mean a lot to me after our conversation today.
Oh, good. And what your marriage is meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so powerful.
So, do you have any last words, Sarah? You've already given us so much. I'm going to remember a ton of what you said too. I have loved this conversation. And thank you so much. You are the busiest. She has a thriving business. She has 4 kids. She has a husband who's super busy and has a very, an important and busy job. And here she is with me. So, Sarah, thank you so much because it just means the world to me that you are willing to take this time and do this.
Oh, there's no way I could say no to this. Like the work that you do is way too important. It has changed my life for the better over and over and over again. It's not a one-time thing. It's a daily saving mechanism for my own marriage and family. So I'm just really grateful that you would ask me to be here. And I think that the big push that I would give is that I think sometimes, especially as women of faith, that we strive to show what humility is in our lives. And sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we think humility means I'm silent. Sometimes we think humility means I'm hidden or I'm quiet or I'm a martyr or I don't take care of myself or I always give. And I that is not what I see when the Savior teaches humility. That humility is a strength, that humility is a voice, and that voice is used to do something exceptional and then find a way for others to do the same thing. And Shara, that's what you're doing. That you have gone through something so hard and so miraculous, and you are now showing a way for others to do the same. And so, my invitation is to those listening that feel like they're so exhausted, they just want to stay silent. My invitation to you is that the Lord made you to be exceptional and that the price to pay to receive the exceptional, because He will deliver it, guaranteed.
Yep.
He will deliver the exceptional for you, is to look at yourself in the mirror and surround yourself with someone that can help you. And that's where I'd start.
Oh, love it, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time. You're the bestest
Yeah.
ever. All right, Sarah, we will see you later and thank you so much.
Thanks, Shar.